Sometimes the most ordinary nights turn into the most extraordinary ones. That's exactly what happened to me one Tuesday evening, when two old friends knocked on my door and changed everything I thought I knew about friendship, trust, and taking chances. It was just after dinner time. I had eaten my meal and was sitting in my favorite chair by the window. Outside, the city was busy with cars and people going home from work. My apartment was quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. I liked my quiet evenings. They were peaceful and predictable, just the way I enjoyed them. That's why I was so surprised when I heard knocking at my door. It was sharp and loud, like someone really needed to see me. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friends usually called before coming over. I got up from my chair, feeling curious and a little confused about who could be visiting so late. When I opened the door, I saw two women standing in the hallway. I knew them both very well. We had been friends for many years. They were wearing regular clothes, jeans and sweaters, but something about them seemed different tonight. Maybe it was the way they stood so close together, or the serious look in their eyes. They smiled at me, but their smiles seemed nervous. "Hi, can we come inside?" one of them asked. Her voice was friendly, but I could tell she was worried about something. "Of course," I said, stepping back to let them in. I watched them walk past me into my living room. Suddenly my apartment felt smaller, like the walls had moved closer. The air felt heavier too, like something important was about to happen. They sat down on my couch together, sitting very close to each other. I could see them looking at each other with quick glances, like they were having a secret conversation without words. I knew right away that they hadn't come just to chat about normal things. My heart started beating a little faster. I sat down in the chair across from them and tried to act normal. "So, how was your day?" I asked, trying to start a regular conversation. They told me about their jobs and what they had been doing lately. We talked about everyday things like the weather and what was on TV. But I could feel that something was different. Their laugh sounded nervous. When they looked at me, they held my eyes for longer than usual. Every time one of them moved closer to make a point, I noticed how the space between us was getting smaller and smaller. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things. Maybe I was just tired or surprised by their unexpected visit. But then something happened that made me realize this was real. One of them reached out and touched my hand. It wasn't a quick touch like when friends pat each other on the back. Her hand stayed on mine for several seconds, warm and gentle. When I looked up at her face, she was watching me carefully. I looked back and forth between both of them. They weren't looking away or acting uncomfortable. Instead, they seemed to be waiting for something, like they wanted me to understand something important without them having to say it out loud. "Is everything okay?" I asked. My voice sounded normal, but inside I was confused and curious. They didn't answer right away. One of them gave a small smile. The other one leaned back against the couch and looked at me with calm, serious eyes. The room felt warmer. I suddenly understood that this wasn't just a friendly visit. They had come here tonight for a specific reason. And whatever that reason was, it was going to be important. The clock kept ticking, counting the seconds. My home, which usually felt so safe and comfortable, suddenly felt like a stage where something big was about to happen. I didn't know what these two women wanted to tell me, but I knew one thing for certain. This was not going to be an ordinary evening. The room became very quiet. It wasn't the comfortable quiet when friends just enjoy being together. This was a different kind of quiet, the kind that feels heavy and full of unspoken words. I knew they were here for a reason, and I could see it in their faces. Even though I didn't know what was coming, every part of me felt alert and ready. I leaned forward a bit, resting my arms on my knees. "You didn't just come here to talk about regular stuff," I said quietly, breaking the silence. The woman sitting closer to me smiled a little, like she was relieved that I finally understood. "You've always been good at noticing things," she said. Her voice was calm, but held some other feeling I couldn't quite name. Her friend nodded and looked at me, with such intensity that my throat felt tight. "We came here because there's something we need to ask you. It's something we couldn't keep secret anymore," she said. Those words hung in the air like a challenge. My heart beat faster as I looked at their faces, trying to understand what they meant. Neither of them looked away. In fact, they seemed to get stronger by looking at each other, like they had practiced this moment many times before finally deciding that tonight was the right time. I swallowed hard. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely steady. For a long moment, neither of them answered. They looked at each other again, not nervously, but like they were sharing a secret plan. Then the one who had been quieter spoke up. She leaned forward, her voice low and serious. "We need you to trust us," she said. "Before we tell you what we want to ask, we need to know that you won't run away or get upset. We need to know you'll at least listen to what we have to say." I blinked, feeling both interested and worried. They were being so serious. Even though I had no idea where this conversation was going, I could feel how important their request was. "I'll listen," I said finally. She let out a breath like she had been holding it in. Her hand brushed against mine briefly, which made me feel a little calmer. "Good," she said, "because what we want to ask isn't simple. It's not something we've ever asked anyone before." My heart was pounding in my chest. The air between us felt electric, like right before a thunderstorm starts. The other woman finally spoke again, her voice steady but softer than before. "We've trusted you for a very long time, more than you probably know. And lately, we've both been feeling something we can't ignore anymore. It's something we need to explore, and we want to explore it together with you." Her words shocked me. I wasn't sure if I heard her correctly, or if my brain was twisting her words into something I expected but couldn't quite believe. I caught my breath and looked at their faces again, desperate to understand clearly. "What are you trying to say?" I asked, even though part of me already knew the answer. She didn't look away. "We're saying that we want you to be part of something special with us. Something that goes beyond regular friendship, beyond what most people would understand." The room seemed to spin a little. My thoughts were racing like a hamster on a wheel. They weren't speaking in riddles anymore. The meaning was clear, even though they hadn't said it in exact words. A million worries rushed into my head. What if this is wrong? What if this ruins our friendship? What happens if we regret it later? But underneath all the panic was another feeling, one I couldn't ignore. I was curious. I felt pulled toward these two women sitting across from me. Their eyes were steady and honest. They looked vulnerable but also determined and sure. I leaned back slowly, trying to think clearly. The clock ticked again, each second sounding loud in the stillness. "This is a lot to think about," I said honestly. "We know," one of them said softly, "that we've been thinking about this for a long time. We couldn't keep it hidden from you anymore. Not from you." The honesty in her voice touched me deeply. This wasn't something they decided suddenly or without thinking. They had thought about it carefully, probably talking about it together for weeks or months, wondering if they should tell me. And they had chosen me as the person to trust with this secret. Part of me wanted to run away, to close the door on this moment and pretend it never happened. But another part of me, a stronger part, wanted to stay and see where this unusual path might lead. I took a slow, deep breath and looked at both of them. "You're asking me to cross a line that we can't uncross," I said. They both nodded seriously. "Yes," one whispered. "We know." Their honesty left no room for pretending or games. And even though my mind was full of doubts and questions, my heart had already decided to keep listening. The unusual request had been spoken out loud, and I knew that nothing between us would ever be the same again. The room felt impossibly small now, like the walls were leaning in toward us. Their words were still echoing in my head, daring me to accept what they had revealed. I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement churning inside me. Each heartbeat seemed to pull me closer to making a decision I wasn't sure I was ready for. For a long time, none of us said anything. The silence stretched out, tight with meaning that didn't need words. They sat side by side, watching me carefully. Their faces were open but hard to read. I realized this wasn't a trap. They weren't trying to trick me or force me into anything. This was my choice to make. But knowing that didn't make it any easier. I don't know what to say, I finally admitted, my voice barely louder than a whisper. One of them leaned forward, resting her arms on her knees and looking straight into my eyes. You don't have to say anything right now. Just be honest with yourself, she said. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Honesty. That was the real problem, wasn't it? Because if I was being honest, I had to admit how many times I had noticed them. The way a look would last a little too long. The way their laughter made me feel happy. The way their presence filled a room in a way nobody else's did. I had buried those feelings deep inside. I told myself they didn't mean anything, that they were just random thoughts. But now those buried feelings were coming back to life, stronger than before. The other woman moved closer, reducing the distance between us. Her voice was calm but gentle, almost tender. We don't want to force you into anything. We just want you to know that we're serious. This isn't a game to us. I could feel the warmth coming from her. Having her so close felt like being wrapped in something I wasn't sure I could resist. My brain was screaming at me to stay in control, to step back before things got complicated. But my body had other ideas. Without meaning to, I leaned slightly forward, closing the gap between us. She noticed. Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. And in that moment, something inside me changed. I'm scared, I confessed. If we cross this line, there's no way to go back to how things were. The first woman reached out and touched my hand gently. The touch was careful and soft, but it carried more meaning than words ever could. We know, she whispered. And even knowing that, we still want this. We want you. The last bit of my resistance broke. I let my hand stay in hers, my pulse racing as the air around us grew thicker. My thoughts became blurred and tangled between what made sense and what I wanted. But my heart had already made its decision. Slowly, like I was testing something dangerous, I allowed myself to lean closer. The space between us got smaller, and with it, all the tension that had been building for so long felt like it might explode. I could see the anticipation in their eyes. They were holding their breath, waiting for me to make the final choice. And then I did. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was a simple thing. I tightened my hand around hers and let my body lean into the pull that was drawing me toward them. That small action was enough. Enough to change everything. Enough to show them that I was no longer fighting what seemed inevitable. The change was immediate. Relief flashed across their faces, followed by something deeper and more intense. Their shoulders relaxed. Their expressions softened. And for the first time that night, the heavy weight of uncertainty lifted. The first woman let out a quiet laugh, almost like she couldn't believe it. I wasn't sure you'd let yourself come this far, she said. I smiled a little, though my voice was full of nerves. Neither was I. We sat there for a while. The line had officially been crossed, though I hadn't fully processed what that meant yet. My mind was buzzing with the reality of what I had just chosen. But strangely, I didn't feel any regret. Only anticipation. The clock kept ticking, marking time passing. But I knew it didn't matter anymore. Tonight wasn't about following routines or rules. It was about surrendering to a truth we had all carried in silence until now. As I looked at them, These two women whose request had opened a door I never expected. I knew the rest of the night would take us into unknown territory. We had crossed the line. There was no turning back now. Time seemed to move differently after that. The moment we crossed that invisible line between hesitation and acceptance, everything changed. The room grew warmer and heavier, filled with an energy I couldn't quite name but could feel in every nerve of my body. They didn't rush me. That more than anything told me how carefully they had thought this through. They weren't here to pressure me or force me into something I wasn't ready for. They wanted me to walk willingly into this new experience with them. And amazingly, I wanted the same thing. We sat quietly for a few more moments. The weight of what had been said and left unsaid hung heavy between us. One of them reached for my hand again, this time without any hesitation. Her fingers locked with mine, steady and sure. The other woman leaned back, her eyes never leaving me, like she was studying every expression on my face. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," she said gently. Her words settled deep in my chest. Afraid? Yes, I had been. Maybe I still was. But beneath the fear was something else, something stronger. A hunger to see where this night might lead us. I let out a shaky laugh, trying to hide the storm of feelings inside me. "I feel like I've stepped into a story where I don't know the ending," I said. "Maybe that's the point," the other woman said softly. "Some endings aren't meant to be known in advance. Some are meant to be lived as they happen." Her voice was calm and almost musical, pulling me further into the current I was already caught in. As the night went on, the three of us moved closer together. Not suddenly, but in quiet, deliberate steps. A hand brushing an arm. A laugh that lasted longer than usual. Eyes that held mine until I could no longer look away. These small gestures felt huge, like each one was sealing the choice I had already made. For the first time, I allowed myself to truly look at them. Not as the friends I had known for years, but as women standing before me, open and unguarded. Their vulnerability made them even more beautiful. It wasn't just attraction pulling us together. It was the trust that had been quietly building over years, finally brought out into the open. We didn't talk much, but when we did, every word mattered. "Do you realize what this means?" I asked at one point, my voice hushed. "Yes," one answered immediately. "It means we finally stopped pretending." That honesty hit me harder than anything else. Pretending. Yes, that's what we had all been doing. Pretending not to notice, not to wonder, not to imagine. Tonight, we stripped away all the pretending. What remained was raw, honest connection. The minutes slipped away without us noticing. The clock on the wall kept marking time, but for us it no longer mattered. The outside world with all its routines and expectations felt far away. Inside this room, there were only the three of us, connected by something fragile yet unbreakable. Every glance and every touch carried layers of meaning. Curiosity, fear, longing, and above all, trust. We were stepping into something that couldn't be easily defined or explained to anyone else. And yet, in that moment, it felt absolutely right. By the time I realized how late it had become, the thought of ending the night seemed impossible. None of us wanted to move or break the delicate magic we had created around ourselves. The night had unfolded slowly, like a secret whispered in the dark. And though it was far from over, I already knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The first thing I noticed when I opened my eyes was the light. It came through the window blinds in thin golden stripes, painting the room with the quiet calm of morning. Outside, the world had already started its daily rhythm. I could hear cars passing by and birds singing. But inside my room, time still felt frozen, delicate and uncertain. For a moment I didn't move. The memories of last night came rushing back, vivid and overwhelming. The laughter, the long looks, The gentle touches that had grown into something so much more. What had once seemed impossible had actually happened right here, between the three of us. Now there was a silence that wasn't empty, but full of meaning. I turned my head slightly and saw them. Both women were still asleep, breathing steadily, their faces peaceful in the morning light. They looked calm, almost dreamlike. Nothing like the bold, intense figures from the night before. In their sleep, they seemed younger somehow, as if they had shed the weight of all the decisions and doubts that had brought us to this point. A wave of emotion hit me. Tenderness, certainly, but also fear, because with morning came reality. It was one thing to let go and follow your heart in the darkness when the world was asleep. But what would happen now in the clear light of day? Could we look each other in the eyes and accept what we had done? Or would the weight of expectations and doubts push us back into the roles we had known before? I shifted quietly, careful not to wake them, and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands rested on my knees. My thoughts were a tangled mess. The line we had crossed couldn't be uncrossed. There was no undoing what happened last night. The only question now was whether we would embrace these choices proudly or bury them in silence and pretend they never happened. Behind me, I heard movement. One of them stirred, then the other, until both were awake and blinking against the sunlight. For a moment, none of us spoke. It was like we were all waiting for someone else to say the first word, to test the fragile bridge we had built between us. Finally, one of them smiled. It was soft and genuine, a smile that reached her eyes. "Good morning," she said simply. The simplicity of it broke through my tension. I smiled back, though mine showed traces of my nerves. "Morning," I replied. The second woman pushed herself up slowly. Her hair fell over her shoulders and her eyes were steady on me. "You're quiet," she said. Not accusing, just noticing. "I'm just thinking," I admitted, "about what comes next." They looked at each other with that same silent communication they had shared the night before. But this time, instead of secrecy, it held reassurance and comfort. "We knew it wouldn't be simple," the first woman said softly. "We knew there would be questions and worries. But whatever comes next, we don't regret last night." Her words settled something inside me. The fear didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip, leaving space for something else. Hope. Possibility. I let out a slow breath. "Neither do I said. Silence followed again, but this time it was lighter and calmer. Not the silence of hesitation, but the silence of people who understood each other, without needing to fill the space with words. As the morning went on, we moved about quietly, making coffee, gathering our things, adjusting to the ordinary rhythms of a new day. And yet nothing about it was ordinary. Every glance held more meaning. Every accidental brush of a hand carried a reminder of what we had shared. When they finally prepared to leave, there was no dramatic goodbye or rushed promises. Just a lingering pause at the door, a shared look that said everything words could not. "This isn't the end," one of them whispered before stepping out into the daylight. The door closed softly behind them and I stood in the quiet. The echoes of the night were still alive in my chest. No, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something risky, complicated, and completely unforgettable. As I stood there alone in my apartment, I realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take a chance on something that scares you. Sometimes the most beautiful connections are the ones that don't fit into neat boxes or follow society's rules. I didn't know what the future would hold for the three of us. There would be challenges ahead, questions to answer, and difficult conversations to have. But standing there in the morning light, with the memory of their trust and affection still warming me, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever happened next, I would never regret opening that door last night, because they had given me something precious. They had shown me that it was okay to follow your heart, even when it leads you somewhere unexpected. They had trusted me with their truth, and in doing so, had helped me discover my own. The morning sun continued to stream through my windows, bringing with it the promise of a new day. A day that would be different from all the days before. A day that marked the beginning of something I couldn't yet name, but was willing to discover. Sometimes life surprises you. Sometimes two people knock on your door and change everything you thought you knew. And sometimes, if you're brave enough, you let them in.